and welcome to Ecoholics. Today we are going to understand a very important question that was asked in the UGC NET paper 1 examination of the year 2021. Now the question was asked from the theme logical reasoning, and many students failed to comprehend the question, because of which many students could not understand what was asked in the question. So today we are going to understand how to solve this tricky question of logical reasoning from the UGC NET paper 1 examination. The theme is logical reasoning, and the question that was asked was this. So there was a question wherein the students had to match the following lists of items. Now in the match the following list, there were 4 items on each of the list, and these items were from the rule that we apply in the syllogism of logical reasoning, which is also known as the square of opposition. One of our very important classes of square of opposition, or the classical square of oppositions, has already been mentioned and taught to you all on YouTube in our previous videos. But today I'm going to solve a question related to the classical square of opposition. Now you may get a tricky question like this, which is tricky to firstly understand what exactly has been asked. But if you know the rules, if you know the concepts, there is conceptual clarity, then it will be a cakewalk for you, and some few questions will be really game changers for your examination. So now let us understand what exactly has been asked. So they have given the 4 list of items on each of the lists, where they are dealing with something known as A, E, O. So what are these letters? So firstly, let's draw ourselves back on the concept that we did of the classical square of opposition, where we use 4 very important types of sentences, or the quality of sentences, which is A type of sentences, E type of sentences, O type of sentences, and I type of sentences. So these are the 4 different types of qualities that any sentence can show. A type of sentences will be universally affirmative or universally positive statements. Then if we talk about E type of statements, they will be universally negative type of statements. If we talk from the point of view of I, it means partially inclusive statements. And if we talk from the type of O type of statements, then they are partially exclusive statements or partially negative statements. So with this idea, or this type of observation that we have about A, I, O and E type of statements, let's now understand what the question is about. So they have given a proposition. If A means the type of statement. So if A type of statements are true, then what will happen? Then what will happen to E, I or O type of statements? What will they suggest? Will they also be true? Will they be false, or is it doubtful? So to understand this concept, now let's draw back ourselves to the concept of the classical square of opposition, where we had studied the contradictory, contrary, subcontrary and subalternation, these 4 types of classical square of opposition. Now the detailed study already have been discussed in our previous lecture, so you can watch that video of course before you go through this question. But for those who already know this classical square of opposition, we'll go ahead and we'll understand what happens when one of the statement is true or false, whatever. So let's say that when we talk from the point of view of contradictory statements, okay, now let's go back and let's first understand what has been asked in the first list, or the first item of the list. If A is true, so firstly we have to identify that which of the classical square of oppositions have actually A, or which of them include A type of statements. So if we go over here, we will see that contradictory statements, okay, the contradictory statements include A, okay, Then we have contrary statements. They also include A. And then we have subalternation. There are 3 types of classical square of opposition which include A. Okay. So now we are going to this is not a direct question which has been asked. It's an indirect question, which means you have to apply logics of all the 4 classical square of oppositions to draw your conclusion. Now here, if A is true, what happens? If A is true, so usually when we pair A, it is usually with either A is universally affirmative, right? Universal. So either it's going to be with E, okay? E type statements which is universally negative, okay? Wherein we can say in the contrary type of statements, what happens? It is between the universal statements. There is the concept between A type of statements, all dogs are cats, okay? All dogs are cats. This is what A type of statement. And what will be the E type of statement? No dog is cat. Completely opposite. Why? Because it's E type of statement, it is universally negative. So these type of statements are known as contrary, which always is going to include universal statements. Okay. So here, let's take first this one. So here the logic says that both statements cannot be true at the same time, but both can be false. But right now we need to understand if A is true, then what will happen to E? So if one is true, which means let's say if A is true, then the other will be definitely false. Definitely false. Okay. So with this logic, if A is true, then over here E, which is from the logic of contrary statements, E has to be definitely false. So can we see a E is false type of a statement? Yes, we can see. We can see it over here. It's one is over here and one is over here. Now we want to find out the correct answer. So it will be either this one or it will be either 4. Okay. So the correct answer to this can either be this or this. Now we have to judge what is the second option that we have. Now in the second option, what actually we have is if A is true, then E is definitely false. But apart from that, we have options of O and option of I. Now, we need to understand which of the logics actually are combined with A type of statements. Is it A as well as I or A as well as O? Okay, so let's see. From the qualities of these statements, we can say that A along with O is there and A along with I is also there. A along with O is also there and A along with I is also there. So now we need to understand the rules. What does it say? What does the rule say? Firstly, if we talk from the rule of contradictory statements, if one is true, which means if A is true, then what does it say about O? If A is true, then the other will definitely be false. So, if A is true, then O will definitely be false. So, this can be one of the options that we can pick. Let's see what happens in subalternation because it has A and I both. So, if the particular is false, now we do not have particular, it is universal. Particular means we are talking from the particular side, but we are presently talking from the universal statement side because they are saying if A is true. So we do not need to look at this one. Rather, we are going to look at this one. Okay. Between universal and particular. Okay. We have it over here actually. It's here. If universal is true, if A is true, then particular will be definitely true. Okay, if A is true, then what is the particular of that A? A's particular is partially inclusive. Universally affirmative, partially affirmative. So if universally affirmative is true, for example, all dogs are cats. If that is true, then some dogs are cats also is true. Okay, so if universal is true, then particular will be definitely true. So if A is true, then I also has to be true. Okay, so either it will be O is false or I is true. Now let's see what do we have in our solution. So according to the logic, we know that O is false, E is false, and E is again false in this last one, and I is true. Okay, so here, because all of these options are correct for the first item, so right now we cannot decide whether A has to be correct for second or whether it has to be correct for the fourth item. So we are going to wait and we are going to solve it for the next options also. Okay, so now let's do it for E. Okay, second option. If E is true, so if E is true has different alternatives. Okay, if E is true, then according to the square of oppositions, we have over here that E has a relationship with I, with A, okay, and with O, all the other three, right? So if we talk from the point of view of E and I, if one is true, then the other will definitely be false. So I over here has to be false. If E is true, then I will be false. Similarly, contrary statement, if one is true, then the other will definitely be false. So again, if E is true, then A has to be false. Okay. Now, logically, if you look over here, A's false has been given, but A's false is only one in the whole list. However, we want to understand whether or not I's false also comes under the category or not. Okay, so let's go further and find out the conclusion for I. Yes, I is false from the point of view of contradictory statement. So according to the contradictory and contrary both rules applied, we can say that B, if E is true, then A is false and I is false. So we have the option over here for B, we have 3. Now let's go for the next one, C. C is stating that if I is false. Now they are saying that if I is false, okay, I is particularly affirmative. So we know that if particularly affirmative is false, then the universal option of it, which is A, definitely is false. So we can say that if I is false, then A also is false. But however, this concept we have already covered in the B's list. So we can't cover this one. So we do not have this option right now, okay, because it's already been covered in the another's list. So let's look out on the other logics that we have, which are from the other square of oppositions. Okay, so we want to check if I is false, then what happens? If I is false, now I has a combination over here with E as well as with O. A we do not have to counter right now because it's gone. That alternative we do not have right now. Okay, so E and I, if one is false, then the other will definitely be true. So if I is false, then E has to be true. Okay, then the next one, subcontrary. If one is false, then the other will definitely be true again. So if I is false, then O has to be definitely be true. So E and O have to be true. And in which of the lists we have E and O both are true? In this one. So we can definitely say that C can match with the first item on the list. And lastly, we have D. If O is false, then definitely we know that because O is partially exclusive, or we say it's particularly negative. So if particularly negative is false, then the universally negative is definitely false, and which is why if O is false, then E also will be false. Now looking at the list, where do we find that E is false? E is false at both the places. So now we have to check finally for D option, whether the other logics also say otherwise. Okay, so O we have over here. Okay, O. If O is false, then the other will definitely be true. So if O is false, then A has to be true. Here, if one is false, then the other has to be definitely be true. So if O is false, then I definitely has to be true. So A has to be true, I has to be true, okay, and E will be definitely be false. That we already know about. So A is true and I is true. Which of the items on the list have the same concepts? Okay, so I is true and E is false. Okay, both of which denote the concept of O type of statements, which is why we will say that D has the correct option as 4. Okay, and now that we know of all the others, we can say that A has the correct option of 2. So finally, to clarify, the correct options that we have for this question is A is 2, B is 3, C is 1 and D is 4. This is the correct answer to this confusing question. The question was confusing. Why? Because one item had more than one correct answers, and which can be definitely confusing for students, because in UGC NET paper usually they follow the pattern of elimination. So this question was not a type of elimination, it was actually using all of your logics and solving the whole of the question altogether. So this was all for this question. We are going to meet you with more such PYQs of UGC NET paper 1 and many other concepts of economics as well. So stay tuned, subscribe to our channel Ecoholics and keep watching our channel. Thank you.